Hello and welcome. I am Exit Light and this is my channel. And today, just a couple of months after the 25th anniversary of this gruesome, gruesome murder, I'm going to tell you about it. Maybe you've heard about it, maybe you haven't, but it's interesting nonetheless. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. Please subscribe. Please leave comments. That all helps my channel. And let's get into this, shall we? Catherine Knight was born and raised in an unconventional and extremely dysfunctional family environment. Her mother, Barbara, had been married to a Scottish-born man whose name was Jack, and they lived with him in the small town of Aberdeen in New South Wales, Hunter Valley. They had 4 sons before Barbara began an adulterous relationship with Ken Charles Knight, a friend and co-worker of her then husband. The local backlash from that affair forced Barbara and Ken to move. None of her sons went with her. The 2 eldest boys continued to reside with their father, and the 2 younger sons were sent to be raised by a family friend in Sydney. Barbara had 4 additional children with Ken, including 2 girls born in 1955. Knight was one of these twin daughters. In 1959, when Knight was 4-year-old, John Rogan died, and his 2 older sons moved in with Barbara and Ken. Ken turned out to be a violent alcoholic who would SA Barbara, sometimes up to 10 times a day. Barbara, in turn, would often tell her daughters intimate details about her sex life and how much she hated sex and men. Later, when Catherine complained to her mother that one of her partners wanted her to take part in a sex act and she did not want to, Barbara told her to put up with it and stop complaining. Catherine claims that she was SA'd frequently by family members, and that continued until she was 11 years old. Barbara's great-grandmother, so Catherine's great-great-grandmother, was Indigenous Australian from the Moree area who had married an Irishman. Barbara was proud of this fact and identified herself as Aboriginal. This was kept a family secret, as there were considerable racist acts towards anybody who was Aboriginal at the time. Then Barbara's descent was a source of tension for the children. Apart from her twin sister, the only person who Catherine was tight with was her uncle, Oscar Knight. She was devastated when he unalived himself in 1969, and she maintains to this day that his ghost visits her. Catherine is described by the people that she went to school with as a loner, and she's remembered to be a bully who once beat up a boy in school and once injured a teacher. By contrast, when she was not in a rage, Catherine was a model student and often earned awards for her good behavior. Catherine left school at the age of 15 without having learned to read or write. She gained employment as a cutter in a clothing factory. 12 months later, she left to start a job that she considered her dream job, and that was cutting up animals for a butcher. There, she was quickly promoted to boning and was given her own set of butcher's knives. At home, those knives were hung over her bed, and as Catherine said, they would be handy if I needed them. A habit she continued until she was incarcerated in every home she ever lived in. Catherine met her first husband, a co-worker, David Stanford Kellett, in 1973. He engaged in heavy drinking, which stemmed from 2 traumatic incidents from his previous job on the railway. The first one was when his best friend was killed in front of him in a railway accident, and later when he rescued injured occupants of a school bus which had been struck by a train, killing 6 children. He eventually lost that job due to deteriorating behavior and performance. But he soon got work near Aberdeen at a butcher and became close friends with Catherine's brother. Often, if Kellett got into a fight, it would be Catherine who would step in and back him up with her fists. Catherine married Kellett in 1974, and at her request, the couple arrived at the service on her motorcycle with a very intoxicated Kellett. As soon as they arrived, Catherine's mother gave Kellett this advice. The girl said to me to watch out. You better watch this one or she'll effing kill you. Stir her up the wrong way or do the wrong thing and you're effed. Don't ever think of playing up on her. She'll effing kill you. And that was her mother talking. She said she's got a screw loose somewhere. And if that wasn't convincing enough, on their wedding night, Catherine tried to strangle him. She later explained that it was because he fell asleep after they'd only had intercourse 3 times. So, keep that in mind. The marriage was violent, and on one occasion, a very pregnant Catherine burned all of Kellett's clothing and shoes before hitting him across the back of the head with a frying pan, which left him with multiple fractures in his skull. She had done this simply because he had arrived home late from a darts competition. In fear for his life, Kellett fled before collapsing in a neighbor's house and was treated for a severely fractured skull. Police wanted to charge Catherine, but she changed her story to say that it was self-defense and that Kellett had attacked her, and then she talked him into dropping the charges. In May of 1976, shortly after the birth of their first child, Melissa Ann, Kellett left Catherine for another woman and moved to Queensland, forgetting the advice to never cheat on her. He said he was unable to cope with the abuse. The next day, Catherine was seen pushing her newborn baby in a stroller and violently shaking it from side to side. She was admitted to St. Elmo's Hospital, where she was diagnosed with postnatal depression. She spent several weeks recovering. And after being released, Catherine placed her 2-month-old baby on a railway line shortly before a train was due. She then stole an axe and went into town and threatened to kill several people. A homeless man, known in the district as Old Ted, was foraging near the railway line, and he found and rescued Melissa. By all accounts, only minutes before the train passed. Catherine was arrested and again taken to St. Elmo's Hospital, but apparently she recovered and signed herself out just the following day. A few days later, Catherine slashed the face of a woman with one of her knives and demanded that she drive her to Queensland because she was going to find her husband. The woman escaped after they stopped at a service station. The plan had been that Catherine was going to kill the man who had worked on her husband's car, which allowed him to leave her. Instead, the woman got away. Catherine took a young boy as a hostage and threatened to stab him. The police beat her with brooms, and she was admitted to a psychiatric ward. When police informed her husband of this incident, he immediately left his girlfriend and moved back to Aberdeen so he could be with his mother to support Catherine. He and Knight went on to have another daughter, Natasha Marie. In 1984, Catherine left Kellett and moved first to her parents' house, and then she rented a home. And she was still working at the meat market when she got injured, and she no longer was able to work, so she lived on a government housing program. When Knight was 38 years old, she met a miner whose name was David Saunders in 1986. A few months later, he moved in with her and her daughters, although he kept his old apartment. Catherine soon became jealous of what he did when he was out when she was not around and would often throw him out. He would move back to his apartment, where she would follow him and beg him to return. In May of 1987, Catherine cut the throat of Saunders' 2-month-old puppy in front of him, for no reason other than as an example of what she would do to him if he ever had an affair. Then she knocked him unconscious with a frying pan. Then she gave birth to a third daughter, Sarah, which prompted Saunders to put a deposit on a house. Catherine paid off the deposit with her workers' compensation. Catherine decorated the house throughout the whole thing with animal skins, skulls, horns, rusty animal traps, leather jackets, old boots, machetes, rakes, pitchforks. There was no space, including the ceiling, that was left without being decorated by these things. After an argument, Catherine hit Saunders in the face with an iron and then went on to stab him in the stomach with a pair of scissors. He moved out. In 1991, Catherine became pregnant by a 43-year-old former meat plant co-worker of hers, John Chillingworth, and gave birth the following year to a boy they named Eric. Their relationship lasted for 3 years, and she left him for a man because she thought that Chillingsworth was having an affair. Unfortunately, John Charles Thomas Price was the father of 3 children when he began to have an affair with Catherine. Reputedly a terrific bloke who was liked by everyone who knew him, his own marriage had ended in 1988. While his 2-year-old daughter had remained with his former wife, 2 older children lived with him. Price was aware of Catherine's violent reputation when she moved into his house in 1995. However, his children liked her. He was making a lot of money working at the local mines, and apart from a few violent arguments at first, life was a bunch of roses, and that's a quote from him. In February of 2000, a series of assaults on Price culminated with Catherine stabbing him in the chest. Finally, he was fed up. He kicked her out of his house, and on 28th of February, he stopped at the Scone Magistrates Court on his way to work and took out a restraining order in an attempt to keep her away from both himself and his children. That very afternoon, Price told his co-workers that if he did not come to work the next morning, that they needed to call the police because Catherine would have murdered him. Despite their pleas that he should not return home, he stated that he was afraid that Catherine would kill his children if he did not. Price arrived home to find Catherine, although not there herself, had sent the children away for a sleepover at a friend's house. He spent the evening with his neighbors before returning home and going to bed at 11 p.m. At 6 o'clock in the morning the next day, a neighbor became concerned that Price's car was still in the driveway, and when he did not arrive at work, his employer sent a worker to see what was wrong. Both the neighbor and the worker tried to knock on Price's bedroom window to wake him up, but after they couldn't find him, they alerted the police. The police broke down the back door and found Price's body, with Knight, comatose from taking a large number of pills, laying next to him. According to the blood evidence, he had awakened and tried to turn the light on before attempting to escape while Catherine chased him through the house. He managed to open the front door and get outside, but he either stumbled back inside or was dragged back into the hallway, where he finally died because he bled out. Later, Catherine went into Aberdeen and withdrew $1,000 from his ATM. Price's autopsy revealed that he had been stabbed 37 times in both the front and back of his body, with many of the wounds extending to his vital organs. And that's not even the worst part. Several hours after Price had died, Catherine skinned him, and she hung the skin from a meat hook that she had put on the door to the lounge room. She then decapitated him and cooked his head in a boiling pan and cut off parts of his rump to use as a rump roast and roasted it with vegetables, baked potatoes, carrots, pumpkin, beetroot, zucchini, cabbage, yellow squash, and gravy, and had set the table so that she could feed his children his body. Catherine reported that she had no memory of this crime, but the pot was still warm when the police arrived, indicating that the cooking had taken place in the early morning. Some time later, Catherine arranged the body with the left arm draped over an empty 1.25 liter soft drink bottle with its legs crossed. This was claimed in court to be an act of defilement, demonstrating Catherine's contempt for Price. Catherine had left a handwritten note on top of a photograph of Price. Blood-stained and covered with small pieces of flesh, it read, "Time you got back, Jonathan, for rapping," meaning sexually assaulting, "my daughter. You too, Beck," Price's daughter. "For Ross, for little John," his son. "Now play with little John's private parts. John Price," which is the note of somebody who seems to be a little crazy. When the trial commenced in 2001, Justice Barry O'Keefe offered the 60-person jury prospects the option of being excused because of the graphic, violent nature of the photographic evidence. 5 of them accepted it. When the witness list was read out to the prospects, several more dropped out, after which the jury was impaneled. The next morning, Catherine changed her plea to guilty. So the judge requested that she have a psychiatric assessment overnight to determine if Catherine even understood what that meant, to plead guilty to these crimes. Her defense team had wanted to say that she had amnesia and had disassociated. 2 psychiatrists concluded that Knight suffered from borderline personality disorder. No reason was ever given for her claiming she was guilty, and despite saying that she was, she still to this day refuses to accept responsibility for those actions. At the sentencing hearing, Catherine's lawyers requested that she be excused to avoid hearing the gruesome details of the facts of this murder, and that was refused. And when it was described what she had done, the skinning, the decapitation, the cooking of his body, and shown the pictures, Catherine became hysterical and she had to be sedated. On November 8th, Justice O'Keefe pointed out that the nature of the crime and Catherine's lack of remorse required a severe penalty. He sentenced her to life imprisonment, refused to fix a non-parole period, and ordered that her papers be marked "definitely never be released." And that was the first time that this had been imposed on a woman in Australian history. In June of 2006, Catherine appealed the life sentence, claiming that a penalty of life in prison without the possibility of parole was too severe in her killing. She skinned a man, cut his head off, cooked it, cooked his butt with vegetables with the intent to serve it to his children. And the woman thinks that life without parole is too big of a punishment. That appeal was dismissed, with Justice McClellan writing in his judgment, "This was an appalling crime, almost beyond contemplation in a civilized society." Catherine is in prison, and it has been reported that she has taken on a leadership role among prisoners at Silverwater Women's Correctional Center and is a mediator of disputes. It was reported in July of 2017 that to that point she did not have a record of violence in prison and hadn't received any prison charges. So tell me, what do you think of this case? How is it that this woman, so brutal, so violent, so vile, has been in prison this amount of time and suddenly she's cured and isn't violent at all? Does that mean that she absolutely could control her violence as she's doing now? Or that she was just checking out, disassociating, and not remembering what happened? Why don't you go ahead and tell me what you think below, and I'll tell you when you comment what I think. Thank you for coming to my channel, and good night.